You know, when you first pick up George Orwell's Animal Farm, it kind of looks like a simple kid's story, right? But oh boy, it is anything but. It's actually one of the sharpest, most powerful political warnings ever put to paper. We're talking about a story where this beautiful dream of freedom just completely sours into a total nightmare of control. So today, let's dig in and figure out just how it all went so wrong.
This is probably the most famous and, honestly, the most chilling line from the entire book. It's a complete paradox, isn't it? I mean, how can something be equal, but then also more equal? It just doesn't make sense. But that one single sentence, it perfectly captures the whole story we're about to get into. This slow, sneaky, and downright scary corruption of a really noble idea.
And that's the key right there. That's what makes Animal Farm what we call an allegory. Basically, it's a story where every single animal, every event, is a stand-in for something else. In this case, it's a direct parallel to the Russian Revolution. Orwell is using this simple farm setting to explain something incredibly complex and dangerous. How revolutions can, well, end up betraying themselves. So let's jump in at the very beginning.
All right, so our story kicks off on Manor Farm. And let me tell you, this place is miserable. It's run by Mr. Jones, a farmer who's he's neglectful and often drunk. For the animals, life is just a grim cycle of hard labor, not enough food, and always living under the shadow of the slaughterhouse. It's total exploitation, plain and simple.
But then, something changes. A spark of hope appears. There's this wise old boar, Old Major. He's basically the Karl Marx of the farm, and he gathers all the other animals together. He tells them about this incredible dream he had, a vision of a world completely free from human tyranny, a world where animals run the show, control their own lives, and actually get to enjoy the results of their own hard work. It's a vision of a true worker's paradise.
And you know what? This dream is powerful. It lights a fire under them. So the animals, totally inspired, they seize their moment. They rise up together. They manage to drive Mr. Jones and all his farmhands right off the property. They take the farm for themselves and rename it Animal Farm. And for this one short, absolutely glorious moment, it feels like the dream has actually come true. They're finally free.
Okay, so to make sure this new society of theirs doesn't fall apart, the animals create a kind of constitution. It's a set of 7 core principles, what they call the 7 commandments. These are supposed to be the absolute, unbreakable laws of their philosophy, animalism, designed to protect that utopian dream forever.
And they paint them in huge white letters right on the side of the barn for everyone to see. These commandments are the very foundation of their new world. And if you look at them, they're pretty clear, right? They define the enemy, anything on 2 legs, and they set up a really clear moral code against all those human habits like clothes and beds. They're simple, they're absolute, and, as we're about to find out, they're shockingly easy to twist. So it doesn't take long before 2 leaders start to emerge from the pack. And who are they? The pigs, of course, who are considered the cleverest animals on the farm. Now, this is where that allegory we talked about gets super clear. Because these 2 pigs, they're direct stand-ins for 2 of the biggest figures in the Russian Revolution, Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin.
On one side, you've got Snowball. He's the idealist, the big picture guy, kind of like Trotsky. He's full of energy, he's passionate, and he has these grand plans to modernize the farm by building a windmill. But then you have Napoleon. He's our stand-in for the ruthless Joseph Stalin. He's much quieter, more cunning. He couldn't care less about debates and committees. Nope, Napoleon is all about getting power and keeping it, and he starts by creating his own secret police force. And this whole conflict just boils over during a big debate about that windmill. Snowball is giving this amazing, eloquent speech, and he's clearly winning everyone over. And then Napoleon makes his move. He unleashes his secret weapon, 9 huge, ferocious dogs that he'd secretly raised from puppies. They burst in and violently chase Snowball right off the farm. And just like that, the debate is over. Napoleon is now in absolute, total control.
So, with his only rival gone, Napoleon's reign truly begins. And this is where the story gets really chilling. Because we start to see this slow, creeping corruption of everything the revolution was supposed to stand for. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a little change here, a little change there.
And how does he pull this off? Well, to control the story, Napoleon has Squealer. Think of Squealer as his propaganda minister, his spin doctor. Squealer's job is literally to rewrite history as it's happening. Anytime Napoleon bends or breaks a rule, Squealer comes out and convinces the other animals that no, you're remembering it wrong. And actually, whatever Napoleon is doing is for your own good. He is the mouthpiece of the totalitarian state.
And it all starts with something small. The pigs decide to move into the farmhouse and start sleeping in the beds. The other animals are like, wait a minute, wasn't there a commandment about that? But when they go look at the barn wall, the rule has been changed, just a tiny bit. Squealer pops up and explains that the rule was never against beds. Oh no, it was against sheets, which are a human invention. It is a textbook example of gaslighting, making the animals question their own sanity.
But then, the manipulation gets much, much darker. It goes from being about comfort to being about life and death. Napoleon starts purging his rivals. Public executions. The other animals are absolutely horrified. This has to be a violation of the commandments. But of course, when they look at the wall, that rule has been changed too. Just 2 little words were added, without cause. And with that tiny change, murder becomes justice. Napoleon's reign of terror is now perfectly legal.
And eventually, it gets to the point where all 7 of the original commandments are just gone. They've been painted over. And in their place is just one single, twisted statement. The revolution's most basic principle, the idea of total equality, has been turned completely on its head. It's now used to justify the exact opposite, a rigid new class system, with the pigs sitting right at the top.
So, there you have it. The revolution has come completely full circle. What was once Animal Farm is now just a totalitarian state run by Napoleon. That beautiful dream of a worker's paradise, it's dead. And the saddest part, for most of the animals, life is actually even harder and more miserable than it ever was under Mr. Jones. And if you want the most heartbreaking example of this betrayal, you just have to look at Boxer, the cart horse. This guy was the heart and soul of the farm. His personal motto was always, "I will work harder." He literally gave his entire life, all of his strength, to the cause. But what happens when he finally collapses from pure exhaustion? Does he get to retire like they promised? No. He secretly sold to the glue factory. It is the absolute most cynical betrayal of the working class imaginable. Which brings us to the final scene of the book, and it's one that will stick with you forever. The few remaining animals creep up to the farmhouse window and they peer inside. And what do they see? They see the pigs playing cards with their human neighbors. The pigs are walking on 2 legs. They're wearing clothes. The betrayal is so complete, so total, that the oppressed have literally become identical to their former oppressors. And really, that's the question Orwell leaves hanging in the air for all of us. Animal Farm is so much more than a story about some animals on a farm. It's a timeless warning, isn't it? A warning about how easily language can be twisted, how absolutely power corrupts, and how even the best intentions can be warped to benefit just a few at the top. It forces you to ask yourself, how do we protect our freedoms? And what can we do to make sure we don't one day look at our leaders and our enemies and find that we can no longer tell the difference?